Footnotes. Yay or nay? The use of footnotes is intentional. It's a meta-commentary on academia, historiography, and storytelling. It's meant to be disruptive and uncomfortable. In a way, the main text, where the action is belongs to strange, active in the moment. And the footnotes being to Norrell, one level removed, contemplative, abstracted. But then Norrell does practice magic, he just struggles with actually being involved and making decisions. And conversely, Strange discovers that he does need to do some act too. Footnotes make me miss Sir Terry Pratchett. Disappointed face. My favorite use of footnotes in the fantasy genre comes from the Bartimaeus trilogy. Stroud is an underappreciated gem who writes for a young adult audience without relying on regurgitated tropes or ever talking down on them. And Bartimaeus' footnotes only add to the character's charm. I know a good share of people have their issues with Kwong's handling of footnotes as a means to spoon-feed context to the reader, but to me that's only part of the overarching issue I have with her. So the ST? I'm a sucker for footnotes, mostly because I learned historiography in the late 70s and early 80s when they were ubiquitous in history books. Endnotes started coming onto the scene about that time. I love footnotes in Pratchett's books. The translator also added his, and they're often interesting and funny. The footnotes are my favorite part of that book. I wish there were more books with such extensive footnotes. It's like 2 books in one. Love a good footnote TBH. Interesting. I have Strange and Norrell on my TBR, and this oddly makes me want to bump it up sooner. Princess Bride has a ton of them. It made me think I was reading the director's commentary of the book, which was helpful at points, but a hindrance when it went off on tangents not exactly related to the book. Footnotes, yay.
Appendices, yay.
Aside from Sir Terry, GNU, one of the more interesting use of footnotes I found was in A Choir of Lies by Alexandra Rowland. It's the second book in her Chance duology, and the way it is structured is that the MC writes down what happened, but it is a manuscript annotated by someone else, leading to such gems as, "She was about 40 years old, /*. I was 46, but thanks for the compliment." Paraphrased, but that is the gist of it. Be commenting / snarking in the footnotes on what A writes in the book is more than 20 years old, and there wasn't any other fantasy book with such extensive footnotes, or at least I haven't seen any. Personally, I love them. They were such a unique composition choice. The footnotes in the Discworld novels, Terry Pratchett, are wonderful and hilarious. Footnotes are one of my favorite things in fiction. I just read Isabella Nag and The Pot of Basil, and the footnotes were great as well. Footnotes can play a lot of different roles in a work of fiction. Sometimes they are intended to enhance world-building by making you feel as if you are reading a history. This is common enough so that, especially if you're a casual reader, you might be hornswaggled into assuming that this is the only reason they're ever used, or even the primary reason. But one very common use of them is to interrupt the flow of reading in exactly the way that you are annoyed by here. By no means is this my personal ranking of fantasy book footnotes. Terry Pratchett GOAT. Heather Fawcett helped the world building never got so intrusive to irritate me. Susanna Clarke adds some interesting layers to the narrative, but as you say, could get intrusive sometimes. R.F. Kuang. These just didn't quite seem to fit in Babel for me, and I was never sure whether they were meant to be informing us about the world of Babel or about our world, and if, when the latter, I'm less of a fan. The footnotes are structurally integral to that novel. It wouldn't remotely be the same book without them. I love them. In JS and MN, I actually enjoyed where you got multiple half-page footnotes about some mysterious Raven King stuff. It's like it builds from the odd offhand reference in the main text, the occasional mention in the footnotes early on, to something larger, creepier, and weirder. It has the effect of something like found footage or in-universe missives. It's a good way to let the differences between JS and MNS English history and RL history creep up on you. That's been done well else. I found some of the footnotes more interesting than what was happening in the story. It's been a while since I read the book, but I remember one footnote that I especially wanted an expansion on. It was such a large book that it was nice to have a brief change in story by reading some of the footnotes. Footnotes are a writing tool. Generally speaking, all writing tools can be done well or done badly. Some writing tools are just harder to do well than others. I love footnotes and appendices and maps and all forms of supplementary material, as long as it's optional. Fantastic! Let me dig deeper if I want to. I can also ignore it if I want to. Sometimes I delve into them, and sometimes I don't, but they're a wonderful resource. I've always enjoyed the use of footnotes. Of course, this is definitely influenced by the fact Pratchett was my first exposure to it, and damn, he knew comedic timing. Depends for me. Nevernight's footnotes feel pretty worthless for me. However, I appreciate that it relegates world-building into a space that allows the story to do its thing without feeling like it needs to info dump too much. As for Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, those felt like they were intended to invoke the academic side to the whole story rather than just offloading world-building for the story's sake. I'd put it more like how House of Leaves uses them to tell a whole extra, and the only footnotes I have read are from the few Discworld books, which are generally just for silliness. From my experience, I don't mind them, but I really don't understand why lots of people hate them. It makes zero sense to me.
Yay.
I love footnotes and meta-commentary.